Hi, everybody. It's your girl, Maya K, with The Deep. I am so excited to introduce to you guys my new talk show. When I originally came up with the concept of this show, God gave me a vision, and I wanted to create a safe place on the internet for teens to go. And since they hang out on YouTube so much, I figured what better place to create a show than YouTube. But then things started changing. There were obstacles. There were just so many things getting in the way. And I said, okay, God, you gave me this vision, and the method might have to change, but the mission does not. And that actually has a lot to do with today's topic. And so I like to describe the deep as Super Soul Sunday meets Red Table Talk. And instead of just teens, I've decided to make it a safe place for millennials and believers and teens to go so that they can express themselves and we can have healthy dialogue about great topics. And so today, episode 1, I'm so excited to announce that my first topic is something that a lot of people wonder. So, can God say yes to something and then later say no? That's a very good question. And here are some of the things that I thought about as I even think about my transition back to Philadelphia. So, I took a leap of faith. June 30th, I got to LA. I drove across country from my hometown of Philly, and I realized that this dream is going to cost me a lot. And anytime God has called me out to a land that I don't know, away from my family, I've gone because I know that He knows greater than me and He sees the bigger picture. And so there I was in Los Angeles. And here I am today with the premiere of my show August 5th, now literally back in Philly. You see, what I realize is that just because God moves you or repositions you, it doesn't mean that He's now saying no to the very thing that He said yes to. So what does it mean? I think there are a lot of questions that you can ask yourself when you think about, well, God said yes. Is He now saying no? I think the first question you want to ask yourself are all the pieces involved still operating in God's will? So what do I mean by that? That means that God uses so many things, people, and places just to get you where you need to be along the path of your destiny. And so you need to ask yourself, is God now saying no because maybe all of the pieces involved are no longer a part of His will or operating according to the plan and purpose which He created? So, just for example, you can obviously go to a job and God may have planted you at that job, but then all of a sudden things start to shift. Maybe the boss is embezzling money, or there's actually a lot of illegal activity going on. So, God may have opened the door, and yeah, He may have laid it on your heart to take the job. But if things aren't operating and at least operating morally, I mean, in most jobs, there's going to be chaos. So I'm not saying at the first sign of trouble or chaos, that means that you're supposed to leave. But I do believe God is a God of excellence. And when He plants you somewhere, He expects you to operate in excellence. So that's the thing that you need to think about. Are the pieces, people, places, things still operating according to God's will? Then I think you need to ask yourself, have I grown and the other people involved haven't? I think the perfect example of this, of course, is relationships. And as a woman who's about to celebrate 2 years of celibacy and who's waiting on her man of God, the thing is, it is possible to be involved in relationships with people who don't grow. So could God possibly say yes and send you someone amazing, whether, man or woman, and then all of a sudden he starts to act different or she starts to act different? And even when you confront them about it in love and you try to hold them accountable, they still act like, you're saying something crazy, and you're like, no, I see it and I just want to help you. How can I help you? I'm not judging you. And so it's very possible that the other people involved, whether it's a business deal, business opportunity, a partnership, or a relationship, where they could change. And God says, hey, listen, when I first sent them to you, or vice versa, things were going well. They were being obedient. They were serving. They were loving. They were praying. Now all of a sudden, they just don't care how they show up. They're late. They're always blaming others. They clearly don't care anymore. And so I have to remove you. Sometimes, listen, not even sometimes, all the time, God gives us free will. So people have the right to either be used by the enemy or God. So I learned this from my beautiful, amazing First Lady, the Queen, Sarah Jakes Roberts, Pastor Sarah Jakes Roberts. And I remember her saying, just because God changes his method doesn't mean that he changed his mission. And I think that's something that you need to consider. We get so frustrated because God uses a different way to get something to us. That's almost like rejecting a blessing because it's not packaged the way you expect. Well, like I say, even a pawn can become a queen if it continues to play its position correctly. So you have to learn that God can change things up, but it doesn't mean he's changing the promise. So, with that being said, of course, somebody is going to ask, well, what about marriage? And as I mentioned earlier, as a single woman who is waiting on her man of God, I'm very cautious to give advice to married couples. However, I think it would be kinds of crazy for me not to at least touch on what I believe God would say in reference to, is this person growing? Is this person pulling you away? I know plenty of couples, married couples, in relationships and situations where the people were going strong, things were going well, and then all of a sudden one of them started to change. When the mate tried to, reconcile, what's wrong? Is there anything I can do? It still seemed to go downhill. Let's use the example of an affair. So whether it's a man or a woman, if one of them is involved in an affair, and let's say the man moves out and okay, so I don't want all the guys to be like, well, it always got to be the man. So, okay, say the woman moved out, okay? Say the woman moves out and she decides she really wants to be with this guy. He's giving her more attention. Her husband's always working. And let's just say things seem to be going well. Well, the husband's like, I still want you to come home. She could file for divorce, and he's trying his hardest, but at the end of the day, he's trying to be a good father to their child. He's trying to, move forward. And let's just say she goes deeper into a dark hole and she starts to do drugs with this guy, and the guy that she thought was all of a sudden better for her becomes worse for her. So what should the man do? Well, I say you still should pray for your mate. You still should understand that God's promise to you to have a blessed marriage is not changing. And it is your job to remain in your covenant. It doesn't mean you go out and find someone to cheat with. It doesn't mean that you just automatically jump and get a divorce. Until that person is definitely coming against it, and until they send you papers, I don't think it's fair for you to give up. And so to answer the question, well, can God say yes about my mate and then all of a sudden say no? No, God doesn't say no. If he led you to that person, he knew the trials and the hardships and the tragedies that they would endure. But he gave you the grace to deal with it. Yet and still, if that person just leaves, you can't hold a gun in somebody's head and force them to stay. I know of a woman who actually said that when her and her husband weren't as deeply rooted in Christ, they had gotten a divorce. And when she became whole and she realized she was wrong, she called him back and said she wanted to try again if he was open. And he basically cursed her out. So I do believe that it could be a yes and maybe the wrong time. Sometimes we hear yes, we get excited and we rush God. So I think that's something to take into consideration. So as far as marriages go, I'm not saying if your mate is not growing that you're supposed to leave. All I'm saying is you got to ask God what to do. And if that person leaves, files for divorce, and you're still fighting, you can't fight alone. And lastly, I think what we have to do and what we have to remember is we have to give God space to reposition us so that the purpose can still be fulfilled. He can reposition you a million times. I'm telling you right now, from Philadelphia, and here I was just in Los Angeles a year ago. God can reposition you to fulfill the purpose and the plan that he has for you. It's not always about, oh, I'm supposed to be where everybody else is. Well, if I'm a writer or an actor or a director or producer, they said I got to move to Hollywood. They said what? Well, God created Hollywood. And at the end of the day, he can have your name in a Hollywood room and you can be all the way in Bangkok. It's his world. It's his way. So can God say yes and then later say no? I believe he can, but I believe he's not saying no to you, and that's what you have to accept. You have to know that he's not rejecting you or telling you no. He knows when danger is up ahead. I thought I was moving to LA in January 2018, but there were mudslides, and there were some fires. So let God do his thing. I really hope you enjoyed this first episode of The Deep, and I hope you come back next Monday for our second topic, which I'm not going to share yet. Make sure you follow me on Instagram at Writer Maya. Please, please, please also follow the show page, The Deep Talk TV. And if you have suggestions for an episode, email me, Maya, M-Y-A, at thedeeptalk.tv. Not .com, Maya, M-Y-A, at thedeeptalk.tv. I'm open to season 2 topics because season 1 is pretty much already set to go. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you then.